Speaking of food, though, you know how Jackson County, we ended up voting for this, ended up going GMO-free, no GMO, no genetically modified organism crops allowed in the state, or in the county of Jackson here. And Misha Popoff joins me. And Misha is a former USDA contract organic inspector. He's the author of Is It Organic? The Inside Story of the Organic Industry. And he's a policy advisor for the Heartland Institute. And boy, you write a lot about actual GMO crops and so much more. Misha, welcome back to the show. How are you, sir?
Doing great, Bill.
All right. You wrote a piece here, and it has to do with something I'm not really familiar with. And it's GMO golden rice. And you have a pretty strong feeling about this because here in Jackson County, we said no GMOs whatsoever. It's blanket. There are no exceptions made for anything. What is your story behind this golden rice product? And I'm not really too familiar with it. Could you help us out?
Yeah, sure. Most GMO crops, the case that's made is always commercial. Mm-hmm. So the farmer will have higher yield and use less land. And of course, a good commercial operation, well, the argument spills over into the humanitarian and the environmental as well. If you're more efficient, well, then you can grow more food for the hungry people of the world, and you'll use less land, which is environmentally friendly. But the golden rice, GMO golden rice, well, that one is humanitarian, Bill. Right now, about 500,000 kids, it's estimated, go blind and die. Going blind in the third world is a death sentence. I mean, you can't survive like you could here in the West. Rice is a staple diet in a lot of those countries.
Now, does rice have a lot of vitamin A? Apparently, you're talking about a vitamin A deficiency, which tends to be happening in the third world a lot, correct?
Yes, exactly. The GMO golden rice is enriched, and it's actually kind of complicated. It's not they don't put the vitamin A in it. They put a beta carotene, which is a precursor to vitamin A.
Wait a minute. That's kind of like mixing a bit of carrot in with rice, isn't it? Isn't that really what we're talking about?
They didn't literally do that, but yeah, that's the general idea. And the point being, there is no actual vitamin A in the golden rice. It just provides your body with what it needs to make its own life.
So you consume something or a food such as carrots, as an example, which are high in beta carotene, and then your body itself synthesizes vitamin A.
Yes, and that argument, incidentally, has been made by the anti-GMO crowd, the organic activists. They say, well, instead of golden rice, let's just get them to grow carrots in the third world. Well, that's not going to happen. They currently live on rice, and why don't we just improve that rice that they're already eating?
Okay, so is this vitamin A, it's not enriched though, but this golden rice, this GMO golden rice, is it available right now? Is this something which Monsanto produces? Because, a lot of I have to tell you, and I know that we all voted for the GMO-free Jackson County here, but a lot of it, I think, was also an anti-corporate food movement here, truth be told, Misha. Yeah. I think a lot of it is that if it was Syngenta, if it was Monsanto, it's got to be a bad idea. We don't like the idea. And there's a certain case I can agree with part of this in which they get concerned about the entire food chain being patented and owned by by companies rather than individuals having control over what they're able to use. Any thoughts on that? Oh,
yeah, that is bang on. You have to include, of course, Bayer Crop Science in there.
Oh, Bayer, okay.
Yeah, they're really going to be the big one now. They're buying Monsanto, or it's a merger or something.
It's a massive merge. It's huge.
Yeah, I mean, it would be like Microsoft merging with Apple. I mean, it's just unheard of, but it's happening. But for whatever reason, yes, I totally agree. That is a totally valid argument, but we've unfortunately thrown the baby in with the bathwater. Only about half of the genetically modified crops out there are patented. The other half, including golden rice, are not. They're what's called open source.
No kidding.
Anyone could grow them. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. So golden rice is open source. It's kind of like Linux. It's the Linux of the crop world, I suppose. You just
exactly. Now, with that said, though, it is still illegal to grow it. So the patent issue isn't in play, but the law still is. It's not approved. It hasn't gone through the necessary testing phases.
Okay, well, let me play devil's advocate then. Is Monsanto say, okay, we'll give away the golden rice, or this no longer has a patent on it, yet you're free to grow it? Is this just the Trojan horse then to, as the anti-GMO folks would say, like a Trojan horse to break down anti-GMO resistance? Any thoughts?
the response to that by people like Dr. Patrick Moore, who's working with the person who invented golden rice, Dr. Ingo Potreikas. Dr. Moore used to work with Greenpeace. He left Greenpeace. He now is working to get golden rice approved. Their answer to that is, yep, it's a Trojan horse. You caught us. Here we are. And they say, who cares? And we're going to save millions of lives. 500,000 kids a year over 10 years. That's 5 million kids. So they say, yeah, you caught us. But remember still, Bill, many GMO crops are not patented. A good example is the GMO papaya. It was developed with public funding.
In fact, I'm told that there wouldn't be any papayas in Hawaii if it wasn't for that GMO papaya, because that's the only one that's left, right?
Exactly. There's still some of the non-GMO, but they only exist because 90% of the papaya grown is now GMO, and it's resistant to the ring spot virus.
Yeah, because all the rest of those those papaya plants, they died, didn't they, because of this?
Yeah, they were losing entire groves of papaya to the ring spot virus. And then let's go further. The predictions are we might lose the banana in the next 10 years. There are genetically engineered bananas, but again, they're not commercially available because of the resistance to them and the lack of approval through the regulatory process. So
what you have a problem with then is that you're claiming that the blanket bans that are going in, I know the European Union has a blanket ban on this, and Jackson County has this too. The problem, I guess, that you're seeing with this is that there is value then to some GMOs, but when you just say no GMOs, period, you're throwing out babies with bathwaters in some cases.
Exactly. And if I might add to that too, Bill, the Monsantos and Bayer Crop Science executives, they don't care if all of these non-proprietary, the open source GMOs, they don't care if they all sit on the back shelf. They don't care if it's another 10 years before we get a good version of golden rice into the hands of the poor of the world. They don't care. They're making money hand over fist with the small handful of patented GMO crops that are approved, like your Roundup-resistant crops and your BT crops. They're making all sorts of money off of that.
Isn't there a case to be made that Roundup-resistant crop, which has been the big push from a lot of GMO companies, that's probably one of the biggest complaints I hear about, because the research I'm reading is that is it glyphosate or glyphosate? I forget which one it is. But basically, the Roundup chemical. We're starting to see a lot of that just in the water and in the regular food chains now, whether you're GMO or not. Any thoughts on that, Misha?
I would say that probably a half of the activists who are fighting GMOs, and probably 90% of the public at large, equate GMOs with the Roundup-ready crop. Some even make the mistake of assuming the Roundup is spliced into the crop. But no, of course, the crop is just resistant to the Roundup. With that happening, farmers are using way more Roundup than they used to. And yes, a case can be made that we got to maybe be careful about that. But again, it's only one slice of this pie of the science of GMO crops.
But to throw it all out is rather foolish in the long run.
It was. Now, with that said, I respect the right of any county or state to do what they want, because, as you know, in the Constitution, if something isn't covered in the Constitution, that power falls automatically to the state and the local level. So I do have to, in principle, support the idea of banning GMOs, but I'll make a pretty fevered argument against it if given the opportunity. In your case, though, it's too late. They already did it. So
I know that the way it's being portrayed here in Jackson County, and who knows if it'll play out this way or not, but that we will be able to market our crops quite easily as GMO-free, and that there's actually a case to be made to do that, and that's how we're going to end up doing better agriculturally. Okay, Misha, final question I have before you. I'm going to put up the information that you have in here about this golden rice. By the way, is golden rice actually, what's the color of it? Is it gold, like a little more orangey, or what is that? What's that look like?
Yeah, it's orange. Some people called it yellow rice at first.
Okay, I know a while back you wrote the book, Is It Organic? And you tell us a little bit about that. What is your basic take on that, having been a former organic inspector for the USDA?
Well, my take here in a nutshell, Bill, and I'm bringing it back to this discussion, is that to ban GMOs from the organic industry was just as foolish as banning them at the state or county level. You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. President Bill Clinton wanted GMOs included, and underline this part, on a case-by-case basis. So that comes in later in my book after I give the history of the organic movement. There's almost a century of history. And even when GMOs came to bear in the market in the 80s. The organic industry just focused on its own history that it already had going in the market, which is to use compost instead of synthetic nitrogen and to avoid synthetic pesticides. And that's really the heart and soul of the organic industry. And I argue that adding in a ban on GMOs in the organic industry, that was very late in the game, and I would say arbitrary. I think the organic industry should give sober second thought to the concept of allowing certain GMO crops into the organic lexicon.
All right, very good. We appreciate your take. Thanks for coming on, sharing some of your thoughts on this, Misha. Misha Popoff, once again, and he also, you are a policy advisor at the Heartland Institute, and we'll link to all this. We'll put it up on our guests on KMED.com this morning. Misha, be well. Thanks again. You be well.
Thank you, Bill. Bye.
7:56, KMED, Fox News next. More of your